Today on the official Marvel podcast, we are joined by the cast of Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again Season 2, including Krysten Ritter, Michael Gandolfini, Matthew Lillard, and more.
For Daniel, he's finally made a choice. And I think that is a big turning point for Daniel. And I think that Buck ultimately sees that.
We'll also dive into Jessica Jones comics with Marvel Comics Editor Alanna Smith as we pick out 5 essential reads for anyone looking for a quick introduction to Jessica Jones.
Yeah, she's married. Yeah, she's a mom, but she's never going to be a person who handles things the way you expect her to. You know, Jessica Jones never loses her edge. She's always going to be, that girl. That's just how she is.
I'm Victoria Yang.
I'm Evan Narcissus.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
We're just 1 week away from the Season 2 finale of Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again. Victoria, what's going through your mind at this particular moment?
I mean, I'm still reeling from the end of the last episode. I honestly can't believe what I just watched.
Same here. That twist was like nowhere on my bingo card for this season. But overall, I think this season has been an absolute roller coaster, right? The gloves are clearly off now. But wow, between the finale next week and the upcoming Marvel Television special presentation, The Punisher, One Last Kill, after that, there's honestly never been a better time to be a fan of the mean streets of Marvel.
Agreed. And while Daredevil makes headlines with his brands of justice, it's been the supporting cast who've had to deal with so much of the fallout this season. We recently caught up with some of those cast members, and whether they played a bad guy or a love interest, they've truly been the pulse of the series.
For sure. And no one embodies that more than Karen Page, played by Deborah Ann Woll. She's a clear standout as the heart of the series. Karen carries the weight of her actions differently than Daredevil or even, say, Frank Castle, aka The Punisher, does in Season 1. Here's Deborah Ann Woll on why Karen is so important to the show this season.
I think one of Karen's superpowers is her empathy. She can feel for a lot of different people, and she has an open mind, and she's trying to be understanding. I think as someone who feels that she's done a lot of harm and caused a lot of hurt, if Frank Castle is a monster, then she's a monster. If Daredevil's a monster, then she's a monster. Frankly, if Fisk and Bullseye are monsters, she's a monster. So there's a fight to understand who these other people are and a fight to save as many innocent lives as possible. Every life that gets lost because of their inaction, Karen feels. It's that trolley problem. Do you let it hit you or do you let it hit 1,000 people? What is that choice? And every single death she feels weighted on her shoulders in a way that I'm not sure Matt Murdock and Frank Castle do. And I think in some ways that is what makes her the heart. She reminds them that there's actual human cost to what's happening. This isn't just a game of boys playing war. And part of what I love about playing Karen Page is that she is you and me. She has no superpowers. She has no sort of special skills or anything. She's a regular person on the street who just cares enough and is willing to be brave enough and put herself in harm's way to do the right thing. And I like that as a representation of those of us who just feel hopeless and like we can't make a difference. She's trying to make a difference.
But it's not just Karen's empathy that defines her. Even without superpowers, Deborah Ann brought Karen's bravery to new heights this season, including stepping into the show's fighting sequences and stunts.
I love being really physical within roles. I think, I've always been a plot action person. I think we find out who people are by what they do more clearly than by what they say. So anytime I can have action and agency, whether that's actually fighting or just an active choice within a scene, that's always more interesting to me. And yeah, I love learning the fights. I love getting the story that you can tell with how you do a fight. A lot of it is like, because Karen was trained by Matt, some of that, because there's a level of street fighting, but there's also just a level of like anger and just destructiveness that comes out. And so they were like, she's taken on a little bit of that energy because that's who her mentor is.
The return of Krysten Ritter as Jessica Jones also brought a new dynamic to set this time around, especially for the cast members like Deborah Ann, who last worked with Krysten during Marvel's The Defenders series.
I love Krysten so much, and it feels like the band getting back together, like we did all this work together and we built something I think we were all really proud of, but I really didn't think I would see it again. So to have everyone back together and have those old feelings and find out where everyone's had so much life in between, like both Krysten and I have become actual mothers in that time between wrapping that show and starting this one. And, that's a remarkable new experience and a perspective that we bring. And every experience you have in life starts to give more gravitas and experience to what you're playing.
That evolution wasn't just behind the scenes. In fact, for Krysten Ritter, Jessica's story as a mother allowed her to bring in a new dimension to her performance. Here's Krysten.
Adding that incredible layer for Jessica Jones, who's already so layered and so rich. She has so much great backstory to pull from and to build, and adding that element of conflict, of growth, of, a real healing opportunity for Jessica Jones was very exciting to me. I also love the idea of portraying a mom who is Jessica Jones as she is and not mommifying her. And what does that look like? What does it look like for somebody who's had a really rough go but still puts one foot in front of the other, to have this opportunity to be a mom, to learn more about herself, to put the focus on something else that she loves so deeply? It adds this amazing element that is very exciting to me. I'm a mom in real life and I'm a badass. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity that, even moving forward, could really shatter glass ceilings, I think, with how moms are shown. Moms can be badasses, they can be superheroes, they can run a business, and they can have their kids at home and really grow in that way. Women want to see that. They want to identify and see themselves on screen. And there's a lot of badass moms out there. There's so much to pull from when you have that additional element, when you have your heart walking around outside of your body. It's just a beautiful opportunity, and I'm very excited about it.
For Krysten, motherhood offered a fresh perspective and even influenced the way she approached every fight and action sequence.
For Jessica, her stunts and the physical stuff always comes from a place of character and a place totally rooted in real emotion, which makes it even that much cooler, in my opinion. She's not just fighting and kicking. She's coming at it with the full force in this season, knowing she's got a kid at home. So there's a viciousness and there's a ferocity, but there's also a caution. But she is throwing down this season. We have a lot of exciting action sequences, and they look fierce. It is sick nasty over here.
And of course, returning alongside Charlie Cox as Daredevil made the reunion feel seamless for Krysten.
I absolutely adore him. And I think he's one of the smartest, most charismatic, special humans alive. I absolutely adore him. And I think when we are in our characters, and our characters have such strong points of view, we really bring out something in each other. There is a banter. There is a sort of playfulness, a sarcasm with each other. Jessica thinks he's too serious choir boy. He thinks Jessica is too crass sometimes, but they really work well together and we bounce off of each other. And I think these are two characters that just crackle when they're together on screen. So I have found that our scenes together totally crackle, and our fight scenes have been so sick. It just feels like no time has passed, but it also feels like a lifetime ago. And we just kind of, these characters are so in our cells. It was just being on set with Charlie is old hat. It's riding a bicycle. It just is so natural.
But there are some new faces as well, including Mr. Charles, played by Matthew Lillard. Here's Krysten on what it was like to work directly with him.
So I actually didn't know that I was working with Matthew. And when I got to set, I was oh, I know you. And we had so much fun together. He is a really fun performer. And he's that off screen as well. And so we were having fun going back and forth. And then when we were not on set, when we were getting ready to shoot, we were really connecting on a personal level as well. And we were just bop, 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 bop. And I really loved what he brought to it. It's fun to see when somebody has such a specific tone themselves, and he's got such a specific comedy style, to bring that into this world and get to act opposite that. We had a lot of fun with it. It was like a ping pong game or a tennis game.
While Matthew Lillard might be new to the world of Daredevil, he is no stranger to the series showrunner Dario Scardapane. They previously worked together on FX's The Bridge.
We became good friends, and then we started playing Dungeons and Dragons together. And so through D&D, our friendship has grown over the last 15 years.
So when Dario approached Matthew about joining the MCU, he jumped at the opportunity.
You know, he knows the actor I am. In general, in the worlds that we've worked together with him and I, you know, they give me like a really great base to build off of. And they allow me in a lot of ways to sort of play. Not every show out there likes to let an actor like me loose. And Dario's like, man, I want you to do you, which to me means I want you to plus this up, have fun. And sort of, I think what the result of that is that Mr. Charles becomes this character that has an energy base all his own that's different than everything around him. And I think that makes it super fun to play.
That creative freedom really comes through in his performance, especially when Mr. Charles faces off with Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk.
There's such a yin-yang relationship between Mr. Charles and Fisk, because he has this base, he has this stillness and this power. And when you work across from him, you're like, oh my God, it's intimidating. But when you approach the work, especially work like this, you come in with a really strong sense of what you want to do and how you're approaching it and your point of view as a character. Every single time you sit across from a great actor like Vincent or Charlie Cox or everyone else on the show, you are given more information. So it's like playing music. You know your drum line, but I'm going to come in and listen to what's playing around me. And that is the best way to approach the work. Like there's a joy to it, there's a freedom to it, and there's a really high elevation of quality work that I think plays all the way through the season.
Which brings up the big question. Between Mr. Charles and Wilson Fisk, who really has the upper hand, and what brings these two powerful forces together?
Yeah, like every good CIA bad guy, he's a pawn in my game. I am not a pawn in his. And I do think that there's like this, you know, there is a status conflict between the two of them. Wilson Fisk runs the world, and he actually runs a small part, and I actually run the rest of it. And as long as we are working in the same direction and mutually beneficial, it's good for both of us. When it goes bad, it really goes bad for both of us. Trust me, it's never me. It's always Fisk. I have the purest of intentions, as always, but he's the one that's screwing the whole thing up. And listen, he's going to have to pay a price.
Of course, the complexity of Wilson's world wouldn't be complete without his wife, Vanessa, who takes on an even more pivotal role this season. Here's Ayelet Zurer, who plays Vanessa, on her character's journey and evolution.
I think Vanessa starts as a very intriguing femme fatale, I'd say, maybe. But without what we would use what you would think femme fatale is. Her point of view is really interesting to me because she likes to play with the dark side, but not particularly dark herself. I think she was surrounded by people who are dark, and she has a tendency to be curious about it, but she herself is not. So when she meets Kingpin for the first time, she finds him intriguing more than anything else. And I think slowly her inclination is to be completely infatuated by his darkness. It's like going to Africa and watching a lion eat, a prey, right? You are invested in the beauty of it, but you have no need to go and run and chase a deer, She's intrigued by the brutality of his character. She's intrigued by the darkness, and she finds it beautiful, which is what makes her unique because I've never seen a character like that. She's really intrigued by it.
This season, Vanessa finds herself navigating even more intense stakes and shifting power dynamics. The changes weigh heavily on Vanessa as she finds her place in this dangerous world.
This huge shift because it's now an emotion. It's not even within the story. It's introspective. She realizes suddenly what she signed up for. And I think the more he wants to succeed and the hungrier he gets, the more dangerous things become. And then she understands that she would need to protect him somehow or protect herself. And that drives some fear. Fear starts dissipating.
And when it came to Vanessa's untimely death, Ayelet says she understood why something this extreme was really necessary to escalate Wilson Fisk's downfall.
They needed something so extreme to happen to him as a juxtaposition also to, what happened to Daredevil's friend. And so, right, so he lost someone, Foggy, and because of me, obviously. So there was a juxtaposition. You had to pay off that weight, right? The weight has to shift back. So they explained that to me, and I was really sad. But it was really interesting because in a way I felt like it's brilliant. It's the best way to it's a nuclear bomb for him. And it is also shocking because people, I think, believe that, Vanessa is stepping into the Kingpin arena. And they got very, very excited about that. So the devastation will be double effect. The character gets affected, but also the audience in a way. So I think there's a choice, the wise choice. And it was really, really sad. I mean, there was 2 days where it was really devastating for both of us. One was, the arena, the boxing arena where everything is happening and it's beautifully shot and directed and just so painful. And then it was devastating. It was really, really painful. And I think also from an artistic point of view, the way they shot everything is really interestingly parallel to the images of the first season of Daredevil. The white rabbit and then the splash of blood goes back into the arena, the boxing arena, with the blood and the whiteness. So it all sort of ties in together, whether someone really planned it or not. It's really shockingly beautiful.
And when Wilson Fisk gets that news, it unlocks something in him, allowing him to go full Kingpin, so to speak. No one witnesses that transformation more up close than Daniel Blake, played by Michael Gandolfini.
I mean, in that moment, that's when he becomes Kingpin. That's when Kingpin really becomes Kingpin. Vanessa is his humanity, and so without her, he is fully Kingpin now. And, I think that Daniel, Sheila, possibly Buck, are aware of the fact that maybe even before that event, even Vanessa just dying, he might really be off the rails now. So that's acknowledged. But once he starts that, it's too far gone. And I think they know that. Everyone knows that Vanessa was one of his ears. Vanessa's half of Mayor Fisk's brain.
For Michael Gandolfini, getting to watch Vincent D'Onofrio fully embody this character was a true highlight this season.
He's unbelievable. Like, the way he's crafted this character, to every word, to every line, to the vocal inflections, to the way he says things, the twitches. He's absolutely unbelievable. But what makes him so unbelievable is that he's crafted all these things and they never affect his performance on the day. Sometimes those things can take actors out of it. But at the end of the day, he's right there with you. He's right there helping you. He's right there reorganizing, reshifting, talking about scenes and ways to do it, that could help and just make you more connected. And so you just feel fundamentally like you're playing tennis with someone. He just gives it right back and you give it right to him. I've rarely had the chemistry that I have with him. It's just, I feel like I know where he's going and he always catches me and he always throws it right back. And it's so fun working with him. He's such a joy and he's just brilliant.
While Daniel Blake spent time working alongside Fisk, Michael also spent a lot of the season developing a complex dynamic with Artie Fruscian's character, Buck Cashman. Here's Michael on how he and Artie worked together to craft that relationship.
It was amazing. I mean, to start off, to just say, you know, Artie is such a phenomenal actor and such a good human, and I enjoy working with him so much. He's become a very close friend, and I think he's just unbelievably talented, and sort of he's an actor who acts in restraint, which is really rare. Like he's so subtle in his performance, and getting to work with him is so fun. And he's hysterical. He's one of the funniest people I know. And so, you know, having season 1 was incredibly important because it laid the foundation of Daniel's relationship to Fisk and Buck's relationship to Fisk. And so you need to have all of that context to understand their relationship in season 2 and why they do the things they do and how they feel about the things they feel. And so, you know, in season 2, they begin to grow this sort of own relationship. You know, Artie and I spoke a lot about it, and it is sort of like a brotherly relationship. You know, if Fisk's the mentor, Artie's more of a brother, a little more caring, a little more looking out for him. Maybe in even ways that he doesn't want to care about Daniel, he does. And Daniel really loves Buck. He's not scared of Buck. He's not afraid of him. He can ask him anything, and he sort of knows how to push his buttons in a safe way. But I think he still underestimates Buck, and he underestimates Fisk, ultimately.
And, as we saw in the penultimate episode, it all comes to a head when Daniel is confronted by Buck one last time. Here's Michael on the stunt work he did and the emotional intensity of that scene.
It's so fun to do these stunts, and these guys are amazing. And so, you know, you start with the emotional dynamic of it, which is he's like getting beat up by a brother type, you know, and that's the thing that I find so interesting and fun about Daniel is that people can have influence. They can be evil and they can be good without superpowers. And Daniel's superpower is he knows people and he can get to people really well. He can manipulate his way into these characters. And so I think he knows that he has influence over Buck. He knows that while Buck's incredibly dangerous, he cares about him. So all of these emotional dynamics, including the other side, which is Buck has held back for 2 seasons, basically. Buck has entertained Daniel. Daniel has lied to Buck's face time and time again. And so Buck also has to let it out somehow. And so it all comes to a head in this brutal beating, you know? And I think that for Daniel, he's finally made a choice. He's finally not playing both games, both sides. And so while terrified, while scared, he's finally come to a point where he's made an adult decision, which is, I'm ready to die or I'm ready for whatever. I finally just made up my mind. And I think that is a big turning point for Daniel. And I think that Buck ultimately sees that, and it's why he lets him go.
And speaking of stunts, one of the most talked about action sequences from this season was the diner scene featuring Bullseye, played by Wilson Bethel. Here's how Bethel approached that iconic moment.
You know, in episode 4, Bullseye sort of has a fun sort of intro piece to the episode that on both kind of a character level, but also then just on a, you know, action and stunt level, I think is one of my favorite things that I've done with the character and on the show. And then setting it to the Billy Joel song is just one of the coolest things I've ever done. So I'm so excited for people to see it. But I know for me personally, I'm like, hell yeah. I mean, look, for me, I'm a very physical person. One of the things that I love about this job is that I get to express myself physically in this role in a way that I've never really done before with other work. And I'm constantly finding new ways to make the physicality of Dex and of Bullseye a real integral part of the performance and a real integral part of, you know, the fun of the character. So doing a scene like that, there's just, you know, there's in every scene, in every scene with him, there's always some little physical thing that I feel like I'm finding that continues to tell the story. And, you know, initially I was really resistant to the full face mask, but I will say that one of the things that having that full mask, the balaclava look, has done is it's forced me to find other ways of expressing the physicality. And that's been really a challenge and really fun. It's all new, cool stuff.
For Bethel, returning as Bullseye and being part of such a grounded and gritty story within the MCU has been a true thrill.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dream, man. I love this job. I love the people I work with. I think this character is just sort of endlessly fascinating to me. And the fact of it being sort of as grounded as it is, it just means that for me personally with this character, it just feels like there's so much for me to sort of hold on to. I don't have to, do like big imaginative arcs into growing up on another planet or something like that. Yeah, I love it, man. I have so much fun doing it.
You can experience the action of Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again Season 2 for yourself today, streaming exclusively on Disney+. If you've been enjoying Jessica Jones's return in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, you might be curious about her origins in Marvel Comics.
Jessica Jones is actually a relatively new character by comic standards. She was co-created by Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Gaydos back in 2001, debuting in Alias #1 under Marvel's mature-rated Max imprint.
It wasn't until the end of that series that Jessica became fully integrated with the wider Marvel universe, interacting with more Marvel heroes like Spider-Man and the Avengers. Since then, she's worked as a journalist, become a mother, joined the Defenders, and so much more. It can be a lot to keep up with.
Luckily, I got to sit down with Marvel Comics editor Alanna Smith to discuss some essential comics issues that highlight Jessica's major milestones from her 25-year history. Check it out. I'm here with Alanna Smith, editor of Marvel Comics, because we're talking about the wonderful character of Jessica Jones. So let's go ahead and start with a little preface. Jessica Jones's first appearance and most notable series is Alias from 2001. Because it was published under Marvel's mature Max imprint, it was meant for mature readers. We'll mention Alias here, but we'll mostly be focusing on a few different titles after that series. Let's start off with The Pulse number 13, which was written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Michael Gaydos. In Alias, she was kind of an outlier, a fringe character in relation to the Marvel Universe, right? The Pulse brings her closer back to mainstream superhero activities. She's working as an investigative journalist for the Daily Bugle. And throughout the series, Jessica's like pregnant with Luke Cage's baby. Luke Cage and her had been dating for a while. Alanna, let's talk about Jessica's status quo within the Marvel Universe at this point.
Well, I think it's a really fun snapshot in time because this is around the new Avengers era where Luke Cage was a main member of the Avengers team. And because of that, Jessica has kind of been vaulted into this celebrity couple status that for someone like her is just never very welcome. Like, she's really not created to be out in public as like a public figure. And in The Pulse 13 is when it's finally time for her to give birth. Everyone is there for the delivery in their superhero outfits, which is I find really delightful. Like Captain Marvel, but at this point is Ms. Marvel, who's her best friend, is like at her bedside in full costume. At one point, Captain America has to go outside and like kind of shoo reporters away because this is a big to-do because this is the Avengers team at the time, and this is like, you know, Avengers baby being born.
Yeah, the thing I like about this story is the whole baby thing. It is so reminiscent of an era. I'm a former magazine journalist, and I just remember like, you know, wedding announcements, birth announcements being big deal in celebrity journalism. And it's like, would this woman really want to be party to that? So I just thought it was really funny.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, like, her whole relationship with Luke is really, like, interesting because they really started off as just, like, kind of a hookup a little bit.
Yes.
And then, you know, that kind of started to turn to feelings, I think, around the same time. Suddenly, there's a baby on the way. So, like, they do really deeply love each other, but they kind of fell into it in their own unconventional way, which is very Jessica, that she didn't do things in a linear fashion like many people do. And so I think a lot of it is just like she's in love with someone who is so deeply different from her and kind of more idealistic and confident. And I think that's what she likes about him, but it also means, you know, it's the life she chose, but really it's the partner she chose more than she chose the life.
Yeah. And before we leave this issue, of course, Jessica gives birth to a baby girl. not named in this issue, but eventually will be named as Danielle Cage in New Avengers number 34 from 2007. And at the end of this issue, Luke proposes to Jessica, which again is like their whole relationship is like happening kind of out of order. But the path to them being a long-standing couple in the Marvel Comics universe really starts here. Next up, we have New Avengers Annual number 1 from 2006, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Olivier Coipel. Alanna, how does this progress Jessica's evolution as a character?
I mean, I think one thing I really love is you can see maybe why she hasn't resisted this Avengers life so hard, because she's just given birth and she goes back to Avengers Tower and she's just surrounded by, you know, like kind of family. Like it's all these people who really care about her and, you know, want to hold the baby and want to make sure she's doing okay. And so finally in this quiet moment when the rest of the crowd is kind of elsewhere, she just says yes out of the blue, and Luke's kind of like, what? And she's like, yeah, I'll marry you. And he gets this adorable smile, literally stars in his eyes. And like, it's a very sweet, vulnerable moment between them. And then, of course, Luke immediately announces it to the room because he's so excited. And he also says he announced it so she can't like back out later and pretend she didn't say it.
Yeah, he's pulling a no backsies all there.
And she's like, I wouldn't do that. And he's like, yes, you would. And she's like, yeah, I would. So I think it's like a point of her kind of starting to become more honest with herself and more open with Luke and open with her community, which is really sweet.
Yeah, and you know, there's like a lot of obviously punching and explosions, but also a lot of heartfelt declarations. One of which like happens during the marriage ceremony when Jessica interrupts their own wedding ceremony and delivers this really heart-filled monologue talking about her devotion to Luke and their baby girl, which again, like up until this point, she really hasn't expressed her emotions that clearly. And for it to happen here, I think is a really, really sweet moment.
Yeah. And especially like, you know, Jessica's had such an atypical Marvel hero experience, like for her to also, you know, kind of meet the wedding on her own terms is really cool.
But, you know, this is a superhero wedding, which means living happily ever after, maybe, which is a great segue to Jessica Jones, number 1 from 2006, written again by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Michael Gaydos. And the beginning of the series starts with Jessica finding herself arrested and in prison, isolated from her husband, Luke Cage, and her daughter, Danielle. And it kind of leaves the reader in a place of, what happened? Alanna, talk to me about like this big status quo shift. What do you think it means for Jessica and Luke and her character standing in the Marvel Universe, and how it reinforces certain aspects of her character?
Sure. I can actually speak to this one a little more knowledgeably because I worked on this one. But as some background, this was, I believe, right after Secret Wars. And what we did coming out of Secret Wars, which was when we, you know, blew up the Marvel Universe and reassembled it, is that a bunch of the series that started up after that had this 8-month gap, like in which something wild happened. Like, we don't always find out right away. Like, a bunch of these series had different things where it's like, I think Deadpool was famous all of a sudden, and like
Peter Parker's running a big fancy tech company.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of stuff happened in those 8 months. And so the idea was like, clearly something really wild went down in those 8 months. And she is seeming to avoid like everyone she knows. But then, you know, by the end of it, as she's doing a stakeout, gets ambushed by Luke, who's like, hey, where's our daughter? So any question that they like weren't talking about Danielle before is gone at that point. And it's kind of like, what on earth happened? Like, is the baby okay? Is it a victim of the world reunification? It just raises a lot of questions. And I think, you know, for Jessica personally, it's just a return to like, yeah, she's married. Yeah, she's a mom, but she's never going to be a person who handles things the way you expect her to. She's kind of regressing to this point where she's isolating and trying to solve everything on her own and not rely on her people. So, you know, as the series goes on, that kind of develops. I don't want to spoil it, you know, too much for people who haven't read it. But I think it speaks to that thing of like, you know, Jessica Jones never loses her edge. She's always going to be, you know, that girl. Like, that's just how she is.
Yeah, one of the things about this series that gives it so much dramatic tension is, like you said, this omnipresent threat that she could backslide into really self-destructive behaviors, right? The Jessica we meet in Alias is like drowning in self-loathing, right?
Yeah.
And her relationship with Luke and, you know, the bonds she forms with the greater superhero community like function as a signal that she's getting better and working on herself, right? And then this 8-month gap happens and you're like, oh, dang, did she really start being terrible to herself again with some really bad consequences? And that's the thing that really keeps you reading.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up in our discussion, Defenders #1 from 2017, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by David Marquez. This one's really fun because it has a whole team dynamic, which Jessica doesn't really mess with, right? But we've got the characters of Luke Cage, Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Jessica Jones facing off against the villain Diamondback. Alanna, can you talk about this series, how it plays out, and what dynamic it kind of sits Jessica inside of as far as like being a team member, but also not?
Yeah, I actually worked on this one too. I'm very excited to talk about it. So this is probably the closest Jessica has come to being in a more superhero role as she's in this ensemble. Like she still kind of does things her own way, but it's more like this is their thing together. She's on the same level. These are her peers a little more. But yeah, so by the end of it, after they are dealing with all this Diamondback stuff, it kind of occurs to them that like, okay, we're the ones that have to deal with this. So we're going to actually be a team this time and work together to figure out what's going on. I do want to mention too, before I forget, really fun thing about this issue is that it ends with a Pulse interview. We return to the Pulse, and Bendis wrote in newspaper format an interview with Luke Cage, like in the Pulse. And it's really fun.
Okay, next up we have Jessica Jones, Blind Spot from 2018, written by Kelly Thompson with art by Matea Deulis. At this point in her life, things are going pretty well. She's back to being a private investigator with her own firm. The Purple Man, who's her one-time abuser and arch enemy, gone, disappeared. And her relationship with Luke Cage and their daughter Danielle, also going great. But in Jessica Jones's life, the past is never too far away. There's obviously going to be a lot of drama coming from that. The issue opens with Jessica Jones tied to a chair with metal chains, and somebody's dressed her up in Carol Danvers' old Ms. Marvel costume. After this kind of really dramatic opening with Jessica being tied up, we do a little flashback, and we see Jessica's with Luke and Danielle walking around in a park in Hell's Kitchen. And again, it's the kind of thing that we've seen Jessica struggle to accept before, right? Where she's like, hey, this is a nice, normal day. And she recognizes that the previous versions of herself would have had a hard time accepting that kind of normalcy and happiness in her life. Can you talk about like how important that is to where Jessica is in her career at this point, Alanna?
Yeah, I mean, I think like as a little bit of background, after Bendis and Gaydos left the book, Bendis actually suggested having Kelly Thompson, who's the writer of this, take over. So a lot of this series was us trying to figure out like, what does Alias look like after Bendis and Gaydos? And a lot of it was, we want to be true to the heart of it, but we don't want to do exactly the same thing. We want this to feel new and unexpected. And so I think positioning her in that way is in keeping with that theme where like, she's got her life together, but what does it look like to tell a Jessica story when she's kind of in an okay place? Like, how does her life become complicated? How are the stakes raised by her having a comfortable life, like, and that's so much more to lose if something goes wrong. So she's trying to tell herself in this opening sequence that she is beyond that mentality, that if she's happy, it'll disappear. And then as she's trying to like really internalize that, she walks into her office and there's a dead body on her floor. So like perhaps Jessica Jones will never truly find peace, at least not for very long.
It's never going to be easy for our girl Jessica, which I think is like, again, part of the core of the character, right?
Yeah, and I think something that's really like brave and laudable about her is she doesn't have to be a PI. Like she doesn't have to be skulking through the dregs of society, and it clearly is very hard on her. Like it's not an easy life, but she cares enough to keep doing it. Like, I don't think it's about glory for her or about intellectual satisfaction. I think she really feels like this is how she can help people. She couldn't help people as a superhero, but she still has that drive to like find her way to make an impact for people and, you know, pays for it like every time she does it, but still goes back in. I think that's very, very heroic in its way.
Awesome. Well, Alanna, thank you so much for joining us and going through Jessica Jones's publishing history.
The second season finale of Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again is next week. And if you're anything like me, you might be feeling a bit impatient. Or maybe you're suddenly realizing your weekly fix of The Man Without Fear is coming to an end. If either or both sound familiar, don't worry. There are decades of Daredevil stories just waiting for you in the comics. Whether you're interested in Matt Murdock's extensive rogues gallery, romantic history, or even his most iconic team-ups, there's truly something for everyone. And I get it, figuring out where to start isn't always the easiest. Luckily, former Daredevil writer Charles Soule has some perfect recommendations to help you dive into Daredevil comics.
This may or may not come as a surprise to anybody who has followed the work that I've done at Marvel Comics, but I'm a big Daredevil reader, really a huge fan of basically all the runs on that character. Really, any Daredevil run is worth your time. I'm going all the way back to Stan Lee, but then moving forward, Frank Miller, Brian Michael Bendis, Ed Brubaker. I mean, just it goes on and on and on. And I recently went through Chip Zdarsky's great run on the title with Marco Cocchetto, so I can recommend that without reservation. It picks up pretty much directly from mine, but Daredevil is always a good read.
Charles is right. Any Daredevil is good Daredevil. But if you're still unsure where to begin, you can find multiple reading guides covering Daredevil, Wilson Fisk, Foggy Nelson, and more favorites at marvel.com/comics/guides.
Next week on the official Marvel podcast, we're joined by Daredevil Born Again showrunner Dario Scardapane.
Every one of the characters, from Matt and Wilson all the way through the cast, everybody has to pick a side. Everybody has to make a decision. Everybody has to kind of pick a side and deal with the consequences thereof.
Until then, make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen. And hey, why not drop a comment or give us those 5 stars?
This episode of the official Marvel podcast was hosted by Victoria Ying and me, Evan Narcisse.
Our producers are Jasmine Estrada and Anita Flores.
Brad Barton is our senior manager of audio production and development, and our production manager is Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Emma Munger.
Our theme music is by Ida Akbal.
Executive produced by Larissa Rosen.
Thanks for listening, everyone.